to the Weekly Bioanalysis, a KCAS Bio podcast.
Hello and welcome to the 92nd episode of the Weekly Bioanalysis, the official podcast of KCAS Bio. KCAS Bio is a bioanalytical CRO serving the pharmaceutical and biopharmaceutical industries for over 40 years. My name is John Perkins and I've been in the bioanalytical LCMS space for around 30 years. I'm here with my co-host, Dominic Guarino.
Hi, I'm Dominic Guarino, and I've been in the ligand binding assay and immunology space for close to 30 years as well.
Dominic and I are members of the growing scientific advisory team at KCAS Bio. Either or both of us are available to answer any questions you may have regarding this podcast or any of KCAS Bio's services. Today we're here with a mystery guest as part of an action-packed main topic discussion. We're thrilled to have you listening to the 92nd episode of the podcast, which is now available virtually everywhere. Wherever you choose to find and play your podcasts, you can now likely find the Weekly Bioanalysis. We welcome all of you, whether you are joining us for the first time or if you're a regular listener. Today's podcast will be a review of the latest news and resources and then a focus on the topic of our choosing before discussing any feedback we've had from you. We're constantly looking for topics and we'd be happy to discuss something that you want us to cover. So again, we're fired up to have you here and we are looking forward to a fun episode today. To kick us off for podcast 92, Dominic is going to go over today's podcast topic a bit before we jump into the news and resources section. Dom.
Yeah, so if you're new to the show, we'll start off with some news and resources from our choosing, and then we'll go right into the main portion. And today's main portion is a hot topic. It's GLP-1 receptor agonists and analogs and the growing focus on obesity, current state of play, and what's next. We have a pretty large amount of items to get through, and so it should be an exciting podcast. But basically, we'll give you a background on GLP-1s and some of the indications, as well as we've alluded to, we'll have a guest on, and then some of the recent applications, an update on it, bioanalysis, and some future indications. So bioanalysis of GLP-1s and some future additional indications. So it's an exciting one, John, but without further ado, let's just jump right into the news and resources.
Sure. I was just talking beforehand. This is, right now, the news is a pretty dry. There's not a lot of source of interesting things to talk about, I'll be honest, so I'm scrabbling a bit. But there's some nice stuff that I thought this is interesting, not from any particular medical advance thing, but how it might affect the industry in Europe. And it was an article in Fierce Biotech saying, is Basel the next Boston? The Swiss biotech hub raising its game. And like, as we know, because obviously we have like business development people who are region focused. The big areas for us in this country are Boston, San Francisco, to a lesser extent San Diego, and then when you look abroad, Shanghai is big in China. Although when I was there years ago, there was a lot of incentives from other cities to get biotechs to start up in them to sort of try and spread the load a bit from Shanghai. And then because I've got roots in the UK, you sort of think of Cambridge, UK is possibly one as well. Certainly AstraZeneca are headquartered there in the UK. But Basel's a really interesting case as a city. You got both Roche and Novartis are headquartered there, and Sandoz, the generic piece of Novartis, are also there. And it's also got a really interesting spot within Europe, because Switzerland is right at the centre. It's expensive to live and buy there. But Basel, because of its unique spot, actually takes advantage of being really close to France and Germany. And I don't know if you've ever flown into Basel Airport. I'll use the word interesting again.
Mm-hmm.
But it's two countries served in one airport. And if you go out the wrong door when you go into Basel in Switzerland, you end up in France, and then you got a major scramble to obviously get back on the right side. If you're checking in, I was there one time years ago, and there was a power cut on the Swiss side. So like there was no air conditioning, you couldn't charge phones, anything else, and everyone on the French side was like having a great time. You couldn't buy drinks because none of the cash registers or anything were working. But so it's this split down the middle airport, and like I say, this plays into Basel's unique position, and that a lot of the employees they live in France and Germany, and it's an easy easy jump across the border to work in Basel for the day. So they take advantage of Basel to work and then go back and live in France and Germany. And so you can see a lot of the reasons why this would spring up. And I'll pass it back, Jen. I've got a few more thoughts.
Yeah, no, John, I only because of our site in Lyon am I familiar with the growth and the biotech hub that is Basel, right? Because just having
Sure.
gone over there a few times,
Yep.
I think it's like an hour, maybe 90 minutes from Lyon by I think train or bus or something like that. By
Sure.
car,
Yeah.
in fact, it's not far. Some clients fly into Basel and then travel instead of Paris, right?
Yep.
And so no, I've never been, but I think it's hilarious that it's like never really thought about how that being so centrally located that allows you to walk out one door into like really Switzerland and Paris and obviously or Switzerland and France, and then knowing it was very close to Germany, that fuels the market really in Europe, right? I believe France and Germany,
Yep.
although like you said, the UK, but it's one other thing that comes to mind is like it's surprising it's not Zurich, right? That kind of shocked me a little bit.
I think it's because Zurich is that bit further towards more into Germany,
Maybe
and it
it's
is easy access to Germany.
I
And,
mean,
and and again, part of the reason why I picked this up is because they're talking right now. There's 800 different companies founding in Basel in terms of
really?
biotechs, etc. That's what it said.
Wow.
Yeah, where is it?
Wow.
But it's also, I mean, it has a history. There's been a history of offshoots because things like Actelion and Axivan, they were both offshoots from Roche, and they since now no longer exist. But Basilia are another company who are cited in this article, again another offshoot from Roche, and they've been going for years now, and more in the infectious antibiotic market. But yeah, I think it said 800. Let me see. Yeah, in fact, around 800 life science companies now have a presence in the city. Said Christoph Klopper, CEO of Basel Area Business and Innovation, which promotes investment in the area. So they've got CDMO Lonza, there's Beijing, or who are now known as B1 Medicines, which has their European headquarters there. The other thing, like when you talked about the UK, I used to know people who commuted from the UK to Basel. If you go in there, if you got like the Monday morning flight from the UK, there'd be a lot of people who were doing that flight, and you'd see the same people doing the return flight on the Friday afternoon as they're going home to their family to spend the weekend in the UK. So it's like I say, it takes advantage of the fact that Europe is so small and its position, and it makes sense to build something around it.
Yeah.
And I just thought it was interesting for us as you're talking business development, you're looking for areas that are like could be fertile for speculation and just sort of just seeing what's there at Basel. If they do more to take advantage of their position, which it sounds like they're trying to do, it could be a good one for us to look at for the future.
Yeah, I recall meeting someone from Roche who commuted from Italy to Basel too, so it's not far from Italy. It
Sure.
definitely
Yeah.
feels like it's central. Within the article here, there's some impressive numbers, John. Right, like $3 billion invested in 24. That's a 22% increase. That's a fair amount of money pumped in there. Bunch of these companies, you're right. I've never really heard of Atlantis or Six Peaks, but it's amazing. And then it kind of jokingly starts with, if you go out to eat in Basel, more than likely you're going to run into someone in the life sciences. So it truly is becoming, seems like Boston-like. It's got the rich
Sure.
culture to it. I hear it's beautiful, right, John? It's really a nice city.
It's a nice city, absolutely. Yeah. There's a really good craft beer called Yuli Beer, which I can thoroughly recommend if you ever go over there.
I feel like I've had that maybe, but go
yeah,
ahead. Yeah.
it's I've always enjoyed my visits there. So I like to say, to me it was an interesting article, and I think it makes sense to sort of keep an eye on what's happening there for the long term.
Yeah, they say it's kind of funny. One of the kind of ends by saying it's still got a long way to go to become Silicon Valley or Boston, but I think it's on its way. Really cool stuff,
Sure.
John.
Yeah.
Didn't really, like I said, I wouldn't have. This would have really shocked the heck out of me if I had already known that visiting Lyon had made it clear that Basel, and then there's quite a few large pharma hubs there. And
Yeah.
you touched on, like, at one point was was J&J there, or they moved or something?
They've actually joined. They've just give me a minute. J&J are there as a small presence, and if I could find it very quickly, they're in the biotech park.
Okay,
Um,
and it must
God,
be like a little bit of a
it's
just
yeah,
like one of their like research centers or discovery centers that
yes,
a lot of the
exactly.
companies are
It's
doing.
actually, so I mean, because we know J&J here have set up like the research hubs around around this country, but they're in the Basel Innovation Hub, and you sit on the outskirts of the city, and the hub's headquarters were inaugurated in 2022, and since then the likes of antibody drug conjugate focused Alentis, and then Bright Peak Therapeutics and the Swiss Tropical and Public Health Institute have moved in. So again, if you have that, that large pharma who, even if it's a smaller research group, it still gives something to build
Yeah.
other companies round, and it just it sort of it just all helps the area's presence. I mean, because the reason why I picked up on this is when you go to EBF, you don't really think of hubs in Europe, and you know where people are in Europe, etc. But there's no particular standout. So it's actually interesting to see that Basel could move much more towards that role. And it's like we saw with Boston. It's like the more people go there, the more it then attracts others
Yeah.
who are not there to join it. And so Boston, over the last few years, has really accelerated in terms of like the large pharma going and joining the
Exactly.
biotechs that were already there. So it's once you get that momentum, then it really builds. And like I say, I just thought, for me, it's because I've got that sort of European and US focus. I thought this was something that really piqued my interest.
No, for sure. I think we can move on to the next article here, but
Yeah,
there's definitely like you use the word momentum. That's a good word to be using, or just like when it's the talents there, right? That becomes
exactly. Yes,
yeah. It's
yes.
it's really like they kind of talk about that in the article, and that's really what a lot of that drove Boston. There are a lot of universities in Basel because that's where Boston gets a lot of it, or is it just other? John, do you know if there's a lot of
I
universities in
think it's I
Basel?
think it's I think it's mainly University of Basel, but to
Yeah.
me, the key is it doesn't really matter at Basel
No,
itself,
correct. Yeah,
because
they're
you've got
getting
France and Germany are close, and they do make the article that even Zurich, and you mentioned Zurich, it's only an hour away, so you've got the university there you can tap to. There's so much stuff is within commuting distance that
yeah.
makes it's in like a very very nice spot within the European continent.
Yeah, so like you said, it just attracts talent. It makes and if the talent's there, then the large pharma will find a way there, right? That's what's
Yes,
happening in
yes,
Boston.
yes,
So
and it helps that they've already got the two big boys in terms of
yes,
Roche and Novartis, and like I say, when I mentioned Axovan, Actelion, they were people who left Roche and then set up. They actually were in Auschwitz, which was near Basel, but there's still and I know that there's like Swiss CROs. There was an LCMS lab that is close to that. Has a very good reputation and things like that. So yeah,
yeah.
there's a lot going on there. You just don't hear much about it.
No, I think it's very good for us in Lyon, right? Yeah, I
Yep.
think that's a
So
very
let's
good
move
thing.
on.
Yeah,
And
you got a real neat one here, huh? This
yeah,
is all the rage in America these
yeah,
days.
and this is just, it doesn't really come to a major conclusion, but it is interesting.
Yeah.
And the headline is a BBC article. It's like the bizarre way food messes with the medicines we take, and they lead off with a guy who took Viagra, and he had one idea in mind, but after after its use, he couldn't alleviate the symptoms, and as it turned out on further investigation, he'd drunk a lot of pomegranate juice, and there was interaction between the pomegranate juice and sildenafil that actually caused his problem. But it's symptomatic of other
He
things.
couldn't deflate the situation, John.
That's exactly it. I really didn't know how to touch on this, but I
Yeah,
thought,
he touched on it very well. He could not deflate the situation.
yes,
An
here we
interesting
go.
side. I kind of jumped in, but the pomegranate juice is really it's got to be a Well, go on, John. This is a fascinating topic.
Yeah, it's in. I mean, it's one of those things, and I've read through it several times. You don't necessarily think about how food interacts with the medicines you take, and obviously this is much more applicable to small molecules where you're taking an oral pill and it's all mixing in the stomach, etc. And but they can affect the metabolism of drugs in either in positive or negative ways, or they can affect they can actually render things inactive, which I hadn't realized, and we'll touch on that later. But one of the ones that they talk about, I've known for a long time, is grapefruit juice, and they talk in the article that if you're drinking a fruit juice, it's effectively a condensed form of the natural juice out of the uh, of the fruits. You're getting a concentrated effect of if you're drinking juice, and obviously grapefruit juice interacts with some of the statins. And certainly in my previous job, we did a big atorvastatin and grapefruit interaction study. And I never saw the outcome of the results, but obviously that's one of the main labels of 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 atorvastatin is you can't have grapefruit with it, which I have to say as an atorvastatin take is a major loss. And it was once I was in New York several years ago, I forgot to take my medicine with me. So I was like actually lucky where I was in a restaurant where they had grapefruit on the menu for breakfast. It was like, oh my God, the first time I had grapefruit in forever. But yeah, it is something to you sort of think it's possibly something to be aware of. It's like most pharmaceuticals, it doesn't matter. And then we know that when we're doing supporting investigative drugs, you'll often see in either dose escalation or in separate studies do a food and fasted arm where you're looking at the effect of food. But then it says what the breakfast is on that, and it's basically 2 slices of toast with butter, 2 slices of fried bacon, 2 fried eggs, some hash browns, and a large glass of whole milk, which sounds fantastic.
Yeah.
But that's not really touching on a lot of the other items that you touch in, like things like fruit juice. There's not a fruit juice um, in that diet, but it is testing. How does just food obviously a high calorie, high fat meal, how does that affect the metabolism of the drug in general? I'll pass it to you now. I'll say some more.
Yeah, no, it's there's always like I think the grapefruit one's interesting because it may have some toxic effect, and so
Yes.
it wasn't unheard of to see some kids in college walking around drinking orange juice or grapefruit juice, if you know what I mean, because it does have some enhancement. But it's really it's hard to study this, right?
Yep. Yep.
Because of the nature of like there's the article's rather big, right? And
Yep.
there is a clear cut case of cranberries, John, which are well. Let me take a step back. When the food you eat always has an effect on you, right, John? But
Yeah.
the
Absolutely.
the thing that for me, like when I was learning PK science when I first came here, because didn't really do a whole bunch of PK until I got it. Um, the effect of like eating asparagus is just goes to show you how quickly things can metabolize in the body, right? Right, you know that if you eat
Yep. Sure.
asparagus, literally sometimes within 15-30 minutes you go to the bathroom, you can smell that asparagus, right? And
Exactly.
that
Yes.
kind of sets the tone to me about just how quickly your body can process something, right?
Yep.
It's like the most classic example. And so with that, like you touched on it's you would think like highly acidic things, maybe even high dairy products, but it really doesn't. There's no conclusive
No,
evidence.
there isn't, and it's well. I mean, for grapefruit juice, it basically inhibits cytochrome
Yeah.
P450 3A4, which again in drug research they will do obviously metabolism screens to see which metabolism pathway it might be affected, but an investigative drug might be affected by, and so then you will do drug interaction studies. So we that's a very common thing to do.
And I think,
But again, to some of those, it's like when I think of this, is sometimes it's just down to someone is it a across the board thing, which with grapefruit it obviously is, or is it an isolated case where someone in a one-off scenario has taken a ton of eaten a ton
Yeah,
of something?
that's the cranberry story, right?
Yeah, and
That's an example
that's
of that, or
also.
even the pomegranate one. I think the pomegranate one
Yes,
is just
I would agree with that. Yeah, I
yeah.
mean, I wouldn't say to everyone watch out what drugs you're taking with
But you see what,
pomegranate.
and they're fruits, right? So you see where, and then John, it's not like it doesn't. It's actually it doesn't neutralize the drug. It actually enhances it, right? That's
Sure.
most of the time. It's not.
What?
So I think that's important to point out. A lot of these aren't like having a oh hey your medicine's not working effect. It's actually like synergizing with the drug and causing kind of these
But that's
overreactivity of a drug isn't a good thing, John. It's that's a
that's
side
not
effect, right?
always the case. I mean, that
Wow.
you have some that go in the opposite direction because it mentions I think it was high fiber early on
Fiber.
that it mentioned.
And maybe some
Also,
dairy, right?
it
Yeah.
does
Sorry.
talk about dairy with ciprofloxacin and norfloxacin. And I mean, I've taken ciprofloxacin for diverticulitis, and I did not know about the yogurt and cheese thing, which basically says dairy products like milk, yogurt, and cheese can change how ciprofloxacin and norfloxacin are absorbed by your digestive system. A mechanism researchers call the cheese effect. Foods heavy in fiber, like wholemeal cereals, can also have a similar effect. The molecules from the dairy and fiber seem to effectively hug the molecules from the medication while they're in the intestines and stop them from entering the bloodstream. Then the drug doesn't enter in your blood because in your intestines the dairy products bind to medication that gets stuck in your gut. So the solution for this one is simple as don't eat cheese around the time that you're taking the drug. I mean, I'm thinking about this. Like, so for diverticulitis, there's various different courses, but one of them it's usually a dual antibiotic thing, and one of them is sometimes ciprofloxacin.
Mm-hmm.
But I mean, often when we're on a busy day, one of the things that I will have for lunch, 'cause I know it's quick, is I'll go make myself a cheese sandwich. And I'm very erratic in terms of when I take my pills. Sometimes it's just like I'm in the kitchen, I'm making lunch, I'll throw my pills down, then I move on. So I don't know if I had a day where
Yeah.
where I had the cheese sandwich and maybe it didn't work as well as it should.
Well, I mean, how would you know? You might just not like. You might just feel a little. Oh, I don't feel great, or
yeah,
oh,
I
fantastic.
thought
It's not. You don't think about that, right?
or I was feeling better and I don't feel quite so great today. Yeah, absolutely, you don't. Yeah.
And licorice is on here too, which is I've always thought that to be a fun one because I feel like that affects your, the color of your tongue and all sorts of stuff when you eat it. I just thought it's a fascinating topic, John, and I think
Yeah.
it's one that I don't think we have. Like, I don't want to scare the audience, but even though
Mhm.
we do all these drug interaction study, I still think it's still a little unknown, right? I mean, I think there are some. I shouldn't say it that way. There are definitely, like you said, I think people know high acidic fruits can have impact on certain small molecules and things like that. But as we go into like gene therapy and biologics, these things aren't really studied as much, and
Yeah.
I don't know if they really have as much of an impact on you, right? Because like oral medications are where the food's going, so they all got to
Sure,
play nice
absolutely. Yeah.
together, right?
Yeah.
Where
Yeah. Yeah.
injectables and things like that, usually your your micronutrition doesn't have too much of an impact on a biologic, but I mean, I bet you it does. It might, right? I don't know.
I don't know either.
Yeah, it got me thinking.
Think,
Is what it did.
I think this is an interesting article. Like you said, there's nothing really to. I think it's an awareness thing, but I think it's good. I mean, there's so much focus on people taking extra, supplements and vitamins and things like that, and you're not always thinking. And say you go to the doctor and get pills for something, you're not thinking how are those going to interact. But it is one of those things that if you sort of think you're feeling weird, what has changed in terms of pills or supplements or anything you're taking? And it's always maybe worth just raising with the doctor. Is something going on here? You
Maybe
never know.
it's having a nurse a nurse for a sister that I'm always thinking about that, but she really, kind of hammers it home with some of when my mom's taking meds. But I feel like you got to be. I know you because your doctor always asks you what else are you taking.
Yeah,
and
sure.
If you don't
Yeah.
say you're taking those I like the way
you don't say it.
vitamins there. People forget though. You're right. Like and then or even like Prilosec or Zyrtec. These are all things that you can take without having to get a prescription for them. So it's important to just kind of tell it. One last thing, John. There was funny story about artichokes, right? Like
Yep.
someone a drink. See, that's all these like new infused drinks and things like that. You wonder, like, but it interacted with colocine, arthritic
It's a
food, right?
colchicine and then
Colchicine.
other medications he was taking for diabetes and hypertension.
Oh, so they just kind of see how they throw that little piece in. So is it really the artichoke? Or, anyway, but like that's how would you study that, John? Think about that. How could you possibly study all the ways to look at common drugs along with food? It'd be
It's
virtually impossible, right?
you,
That's a
I don't know that you can. It has to be on that isolated case of this person's having weird effects, but we can't really track what's going on there. Then you start saying, "Well, have you changed anything in your
yeah,
diet or your routine that might have affected this?" I mean, like you say, you were saying you don't remember when the doctor asks you what you take. You'll probably come up with the pills you take, but I mean, you don't say, "Well, I have a big fried breakfast every morning, or I
yeah,
have a cheese
yeah.
sandwich every lunchtime."
Uh,
I mean, you just wouldn't think of that, but those could actually be the things that are having the effect rather than the drugs that you're taking.
yeah, no, it's just it's a really important thing to kind of hone in on in terms of what you are, what you eat, right? That was the
Yeah,
mantra in the 80s. I remember growing up with "you are what you eat," from your head down to your feet, John. That was a little
yeah. So
Saturday
I mean,
morning cartoon.
so I think I mean it does mention like some work at Harvard Medical School seeing if they can harness the interactions between
Oh,
medications and
yeah,
food. But to me, I think it's so far out there. I just thought
yeah.
this was just a nice thing to talk about in
Well, no,
terms of
well, John, they talk about turmeric, and I like taking that. There's a lot of things. It might even be psychosomatic. I feel like sometimes if you think it's good for you, it might work, and whether or not if it's truly working by like a biological effect or a psychological
yeah.
effect, if it's working, it's working. You know, you
That's my
touched on
that's my excuse when I have a glass of wine on the night.
yeah, you touched on the fast and feed studies. That's really where this comes in, isn't it? Like
Yeah,
it's not that you really can study everything. They just look at, okay, if you're starving, and you got to think that could have an effect too, right? If you're going through if you're a lot of foods say a lot of medications say take with food and things like that too, right?
yeah,
So
yeah.
I wonder if like if you're fasting or things like that, how that could affect it. It's just got
But
a lot of things going around.
I think
Uh,
the ones I think that just is how does presence of food affect absorption? And if you're taking food, then it helps the drug,
yeah.
get absorbed into the bloodstream. I mean, I think, like I said, I think a lot of this you can't really. There's not a lot you can do to test up front. I think probably the high fat diet is a good
Yeah.
way, at least to have that basic test. But then, obviously, if you have a drug that's processed by 3A4, then there's a grapefruit juice study might be a good idea. But we have other probes that we look at in as the 3A4 substrates for doing cytochrome P450 drug interaction studies.
Mhm.
So yeah, I think it's yeah, it's an interesting thing, but considering the number of drugs that are out there, it's not that common, but it's
Yeah.
just
And
it's
and they talk about some computational stuff going on, which that would make sense. Maybe AI can help solve some of this, right? Like, I don't know,
Mhm.
who knows? But it's definitely
Yep.
it's.
Okay.
I think we're not done with with drug interactions for sure. Stay tuned. But yeah, John, we got another nice article here.
Last one. NIH gene editing fixes Tay-Sachs mutation in mice, and this is a team at NIH used gene editing to fix a mutation that causes a form of the rare Tay-Sachs disease in mice, sparking hope that the approach could also work for human patients and other related disorders. So this is late onset Tay-Sachs disease, and it does talk about another form of it, which is more severe and fatal to children. But this is late onset, often caused by a single change where an adenine where a guanine should be in the DNA of a gene that makes an enzyme critical for a cell's ability to break down a common nervous system lipid. Using a DNA base editor packaged inside a viral vector, researchers were able to partially flip the errant adenine back to guanine, restoring the missing enzyme's activity and reducing toxic buildup of lipid. I know we talk about gene editing and base editing and everything. I like this. It's just honing that single base, and flipping it back to have the positive effect. I thought it was just really interesting to touch on. So I'll pass it
Yeah.
to you.
No, John, it just continues with the power of some of the gene editing that can take place. And Tay-Sachs is a interesting disorder, not one I have a lot of familiarity with. But when you think about how sophisticated this therapeutic is, that you can just swap out a single amino
Sure.
acid, right? Like I don't. And this was still just done in a rodent species, right? So
Exactly.
I can't quite tell if it was taken systemically or not, but still impressive. I mean, really impressive stuff, John. I mean, this is straight out of like a sci-fi movie, to be able to look at somebody who's born with a mutation of some sort and be able to treat them and have them live a healthy life. That's unbelievable.
Yeah, it makes the point that it is in mice, but it says the A vector used in the study is specific to mice. So the team is now working to develop vectors or nanoparticles that can be used to get the therapy into the brain of human patients. So
they don't really talk about how they transfected the mice or what they did.
It is fairly brief on the detail. I just like to say, for me, it was that flip of one to the other was impressive. It says the more common, though still rare, form of the disease occurs in infants is always fatal. Children with the disease only live a few years, and they basically said this approach wouldn't touch on the more common form. This is for a subgroup of what is already a rare disease, but it's a step forward in trying to deal with a
very powerful
small group of people. Exactly.
Yeah,
Yes.
it's such a powerful therapeutic, these AAVs, and any sort of like gene therapies that can swap out a single amino acids at like and it doesn't have to be systemically, right? It just might need to be in a certain organ, right, or a certain cell type. And
sure,
the fact that they can do this in mice, and we don't know what the side effects were, but these things appear to be incredibly safe, John. I know there was some bad press recently, but still unbelievable how safe the AAVs are, and it just sitting here, and I think I've talked about it before. Like every day, but we're a little bit closer towards cures, John. And
absolutely.
The 5 years we've been doing this pod, is it 4 years? I guess the 4 years
5 years.
Been doing this.
5 years.
5 years we've been doing this podcast. We've seen hundreds of therapeutics come to market, and just an explosion in like curing of diseases. And sometimes you get, John, I don't know if you ever get asked like, hey, how come we don't have a cure for this? It's like, well, we kind of do. It's like it's just you're not going to be able to cure everything. And I often say, hey, you got senescence is what it is. You got to die of something. But the treatment of leukemia and lymphomas it's never been, every day you're that much better prognosis if you should fall victim to one of those.
Sure. Yeah,
diseases.
I mean, it's one of those things. I talked at the beginning about how it was a light news month. I assume a lot of people are off on holiday, not saying much about what they're doing. But when you think about it, you're right. This has been 5 years, and in those 5 years, we've never really been short of things to talk about in terms of new research that's impacting how it's going to be impacting us down the line in terms of cures, or just how it might impact us as a bioanalytical lab or things like that. So it's amazing how much we've moved in that time.
Yeah, there's just, I guess a lot of it was studied for years, but it's just been an explosion of like conjugated drugs, right? What we're going to talk about today wasn't on the radar map 5 years ago, right? So that's
but they
weren't being prescribed like lifesavers like they are now.
They were on the radar, but they weren't on the radar for what has made them put them at the forefront of why we're all talking about them. And I looked at it as we actually talked about this on this subject about a year ago, and I may as well introduce it.
Yeah, let's get going. That's good. Let's just jump right into the main part. Yeah.
The main topic is GLP-1 receptor agonists, what we consistently also refer to as GLP-1 analogs, and the growing focus on obesity. Just thought we'd touch on current state of play and what's next. And the reason why like I said, we talked about this about approximately a year ago. These drugs are it's a very fertile field of research in terms of new companies appearing, trying to get involved in the obesity market. Obviously, this didn't start as obesity, but it's one of those nice coincidences that when in terms of researching the GLP-1s for diabetes or type 2 diabetes, it was noticed that it also had that effect on weight loss, etc. And that's really although there's been, we've talked about this in the past, that how do you prioritize diabetes over weight loss or vice versa, and when there was a supply issue, the fact is it's meeting two needs, and obviously the big money is in the obesity market, and so there's a lot of focus in that. And for us as a bioanalytical lab, it does impact us because we end up supporting studies with these drugs, and it's just good to know what's going on. So we can talk a little bit about the history. So basically, I'm going to talk about the mechanism. I did a bit of cutting and pasting, but basically, this is all based on glucagon like peptide 1, GLP-1 in the body, which is a peptide hormone deriving from tissue-specific post-translational processing of the pro-glucagon peptide. The initial product, GLP-1, is 37 amino acid peptide, is then susceptible to amidation and proteolytic cleavage, which gives rise to two truncated and equipotent biologically active forms. This GLP-1 7-36, so it's lost amino acids 1 to 6, and then it's lost 37, and GLP-1 7-37, which has lost the 1 to 6. So basically, GLP-1 is an incretin and has the ability to decrease blood sugar levels in a glucose-dependent manner by enhancing the secretion of insulin. But it's but the trouble with GLP-1 is it's rapidly degraded primarily by dipeptidyl peptidase 4, DPP4, and neuroendropeptidase 2411 and renal clearance. So this has a really short half-life, which is about approximately 2 minutes. So it's therapeutically of no use. So you have it naturally, but in your body, we couldn't administer GLP-1 we couldn't administer GLP-1 to have the effects that we want to do. So the focus in this area, it was always a diabetes focus to begin with, was what can we do to design molecules that can mimic GLP-1 and have the positive effect in terms of decreasing blood sugar levels by enhancing the secretion of insulin. And that's really where this comes from. And like I say, the obesity was the secondary effect to this, which has now is much more in the public's eye. I'll pass it to you, and then we can talk further.
Yeah, John, it's hard to just hard to kind of wrap your head around the mechanism behind all this, right? Because you hear like glucagon, like peptide 1. Well,
yep.
Like what's glucagon? Glucagon is two glucoses healed together, isn't it? Like, or am I mistaken?
No,
that's glycogen. That's glycogen.
I don't
know. Yeah, I don't know much about what. Like, it's weird. We measure these things, and I even knew there was like these different forms, 7-36 and 7-37, which is actually maybe important, right, John? That way, maybe we're going to talk a little bit more about how the medicines, the therapeutics themselves, kind of look into that. But like, it's really hard to think about how this all works, right? Like you just talked about it. This GLP-1 is derived regularly from tissue-specific post-translational modifications, but it's immediately degraded, right? That's the the issue here. It's just not stable. It's due to amidation and proteolytic cleavage, so it just doesn't survive within circulation. So why is it naturally being made, right? Like that's the first thing, and it does have some. It's got to have some mechanistic thing internally, right? And it is supposed to help you produce more insulin, right? That is kind of like over time, if there is all this, maybe you had a heavy meal and you've got this translational modification going on, GLP-1 might come up and insulin comes out of your pancreas, right? And then boom, it kind of, your islets, beta cells of the pancreas, and then the whole system. You might even get a little hot, right, John? You get a little flush, maybe you get a little sleepy, and then it kind of cycles its way through. Fast forward to like what's happening. Okay, so what does all that mean, right? Like I'm still trying to like how. Well, maybe you could continue, but why? What was maybe make it down a little further? What was the initial indication? Because GLP-1s were meant for type 2 diabetics, right? Is
Yeah,
that true? Or
absolutely.
not
Yeah,
type 1, right? It's type
no,
2.
it's type 2. Yeah.
Yeah.
So I'm gonna first of all say where this starts is actually proglucagon. It's proglucagon peptide, and that is pre-proglucagon is 180 amino acid protein, and that is then broken down into several peptides, including signal peptide, glycentin, oxyntomodulin, and glucagon. Glucagon is a 29 um, amino acid peptide, and then the glucagon peptide is a is another peptide that comes from that same protein. So you've
Yeah.
got glucagon, then glucagon like peptide 1, and that's really what is the driver for our for what we're talking about today.
Yeah, and just think about how many like
And there's
insulin,
also so
insulin's a peptide, all your hormones are
sure.
peptides. We got thousands of these peptides. Probably we probably don't even know them, but it really it's such a beautiful system, the body. But go on, John. Yes,
And
sorry.
just one more thing, there's also a glucagon like peptide 2, which has been much less of a focus, but at least one company are touching on GLP-2 and co-administered with GLP-1 in early research, and we'll touch on that later. But I mean, it's like I say,
Okay.
there's a lot of focus on this.
Right, so we got a little background on GLP-1,
Sure.
but we're going to dive into what the approved, right? You're going to talk about the approved therapeutic indications and some
Well,
of
I mean,
the
I can just very quickly read off what I have about basically their mode of action. So they work by
okay.
activating the GLP-1 receptor found on cells in the pancreas and brain. They slow gastric emptying, inhibit the release of glucagon, and stimulate insulin production, thereby improving glucose homeostasis and reducing the risk of hyperglycemia in people with type 2 diabetes. They also significantly reduce food intake, promote the development of a negative energy balance, and potentially decrease body weight over time, making them an effective treatment for obesity, which, of course, what we're seeing, they are a lot of the ones that are on the market are doing that. And yeah, that's why we're talking about this
Yeah.
today.
So John, I think that is a good summary of what happens, right? And then
Mhm.
people who are diabetic, right, they have to take insulin because either they're not producing enough insulin, right, or even
Sure.
I
Yep.
feel like sometimes, yeah, and so by after they eat, they don't have any. Their islets aren't producing enough insulin. You give a little injection, you feel better. Okay, fast forward. Okay, so
But I mean, it's interesting again because it's like obviously GLP-1 promotes insulin secretion in a glucose-dependent manner, but also ensures that beta cell insulin stores are replenished to prevent exhaustion during secretion by
mm,
promoting insulin gene transcription. So you've not got an up and down thing there, so you don't get like a crash
yeah, so it's supposed
of
to
insulin.
be,
Yeah,
kind of be suppository of
yeah,
it,
yeah,
so
yeah.
that you're not
And
okay.
it says it's been shown to promote satiety and thereby reduce food and water intake. Um, then it's obviously diabetic subjects have seen weight loss, etc. It inhibits gastric emptying, acid secretion, and motility in the stomach to collectively decrease appetite. By decelerating gastric emptying, GLP-1 reduces postprandial glucose excursion. These are all terms I know nothing what they mean,
Yeah.
but which is another attractive property regarding diabetes treatment. However, these GI activities are also the reason why subjects treated with GLP-1 based agents occasionally experience nausea. And then this is, again, a lot of this is from Wikipedia, so it's all out there. It also GLP-1 also shows signs of carrying out protective and
Yeah.
regulatory effects in numerous other tissues, including heart, tongue, adipose muscles, bones, kidneys, liver, and lungs. So that again, this is why there's a lot of research here. We can touch on the approved. I touch on the approved agents. It's interesting because I again learned stuff while I was putting this together. This had the different size of some of these. I mean, you got obviously exenatide was the one that I knew years ago, and we talk about how it was. It's a 39 amino acid peptide in a synthetic version of exendin 4, which is a peptide found in the venom of the Gila monster, and that's a. If you want to dig into that, it's a really fascinating
There
story
is.
how they came about. I think it involved scientists in Canada, and then it was a company I think called I should have listed that called Amlin, who I know for a while they collaborated with Lilly, and I remember I visited Amlin when they were working on this, and at the time my specs were not the high. They were lower performance than they are now. So in terms of hitting the levels they had to do an awful lot of pre-concentration in
Mm.
terms of online SPE, etc., to try and get down to the levels that they could see in the mass spectrometer. So it was a very complex, sort of LCMS assay bit behind it. Other ones are the first one for Novo Nordisk that was approved was liraglutide, and this is again a key one because this was where the Nobel Prize for the principal researcher for Novo Nordisk comes from. The prolonged action this is another peptide, only a small molecular weight of 3,700. The prolonged action liraglutide is achieved by attaching a fatty acid molecule to the GLP-1 1 to 37. So basically, it's like it's the GLP-1 to 37 that we say is one of the two active forms. Then it adds the fatty acid. It basically enables it to self-associate and bind to albumin with the subcutaneous tissue and bloodstream, and that extends the half-life. And that's your path to success with this approach for these type of medications. There's been other ones that you don't hear much about. Albiglutide was a GSK drug, but it was again, it's interesting the way the thought process behind this. This was starting with a 645 amino acid protein, where amino acids 1 to 30 and 31 to 60 constitute two copies of modified human GLP-1. And they changed amino acids for better resistance to DPP4, which is the principal enzyme breaking it down, but that's actually was withdrawn from the market. Then the next one is dulaglutide, Trulicity, which you still hear mention of, is an
Mm-hmm.
Eli Lilly one. Again, it's a chunk of GLP-1. Again, it's the 7 to 37 active piece, but I covalently linked to an FC fragment of human IgG4, and it's another big molecular weight one. And we will touch on the reason why I'm listing the molecular weights because it plays into the bioanalysis downstream. Um, Another one that I didn't know much about is lixisenatide. It came from Zealand Pharma, and then is now manufactured by Sanofi, and it then goes back to the then goes back to the Gila monster saliva again. So it's playing about with the Exendin 4, but they're basically changing about amino acids within the sequence to sort of help its PK characteristics. And then the last two that are approved are the two big guns, semaglutide, which we'll talk a lot about, and then tirzepatide. So semaglutide is chemically similar to human GLP-1, missing the first 6 amino acids. So again, we're down to the 1 to 37. They've substituted a couple of amino acids, and those substitutions help the breakdown. Sorry, don't help. They push back on the breakdown by DPP4. And then there's a lysine at GLP position 26 that has a long chain attached, which again is adding that fatty acid to bind to albumin, and then it enhances it helps the presence of the drug in the blood circulation, so the half-life is around 7 days. Compared to what we're talking for GLP-1 of 2 minutes, you can see
Yeah.
the difference that makes to the structure. And that's again low molecular weight, 4,113. And then the other big gun is tirzepatide, which is an Eli Lilly drug. And it's an interesting one because it's actually it's an analog of the human GIP hormone, which I haven't done any digging into the structure of that. But it's also a GLP-1 receptor agonist, so it's a dual action. But it's an analog of the human GIP hormone with a fatty diacid portion attached, which is used to optimize the uptake and metabolism of the compound. And so again, that all drives the longer half-life because of high affinity to albumin, and it's a molecular weight of around 4,800. So yeah, that's where we stand with the approved drug state. But as we'll touch on later, there are a lot in the pipeline, and there's obviously a ton of interest in this area. So let's have a break here because I need to go and get my wife.
Yeah. No, go ahead, John. I'll just say a few thoughts, and
Oh yeah,
I
yeah.
guess
So let's
I
do
guess
the
I got
few
some
thoughts, and then
brain
I'll go
fog.
and
I got
get
like
some.
brain fog this morning. Not only did I I thought I even remember working on some of these drugs in 2015 or 2014 time range, and even going back to 2005. That really caught me by surprise
Sure.
to
Yep.
see. It kind of came back like a wave. I swear, I think I got brain fog. Even the glycogen mix up there this morning. So forgive me in the audience. Please forgive me for my ineptitude this morning. But
Well,
no, John, please John.
it's
I think we're
it's
gonna.
early morning, isn't it? That's the
Yeah, well,
thing.
it's all right. And then we're also on our off day, but that's okay because this is a fascinating topic. I think a lot of people have interest in it. I'm just going to summarize a little bit what you said. Like this dates back to 2005. That's amazing to me, John. It's in the approvals of the Novo and the Lilly drugs in 2017 and 2022, right? But it really exploded over the last few years. But these have been life-changing drugs for decades. That's
Yeah,
what we're I mean,
and
these have been things that, in fact, I have family members that I know are on exenatide, and then even like they got really creative with how they started to do it, especially the GSK drug Tanzim with the IgG4 attachment. You talked about that molecular weight piece, which does become kind of an interesting uh, um, engineering, I guess, and then even like which ones do I take, doc, type of
sure.
moments, right?
Yeah.
So, why don't we? I think we're going to press pause for a second here.
Well,
Actually,
we're ready to go actually.
okay.
So yeah, we were talking at the beginning of the podcast. We'll have a mystery guest on. So I'd actually like to introduce actually my wife, and she's graciously consented to join us for this because the way we're structured this talk, we want to talk about what's approved today, there's so much interest, and then you know we've actually asked my wife Catherine to talk about the personal experience with in this case Zepbound, so it's the Lilly drug, or tirzepatide, however you want to refer to it, because I think some of the personal experiences that tell you where they're possibly going with research in the future. I'll let you say hello, Kath. Well, it might be a little bit weird saying this, but anyway, do you want to give some of the background as to why you talk to the doctor about this, and then what you've observed within yourself, and then obviously I'll expect more questions from Dominic because I've all heard it before, but it's just interesting to me because we always talk about these, and it's like they talk about anti-obesity drugs and the effect on appetite, and I'm someone who loves food, and the last thing I really want is to have my appetite affected or to take away interest in food, because that's what you read about in the media about a potential, not scare story, but for me, that's an adverse effect. I don't want to take my interest away in food, but let me pass it to you and then give a bit of your background. No, your background as to why, and then what you've seen.
Well, hello, and thank you for inviting me onto your illustrious podcast. I obviously have been listening in over the months on this, and very, very interested and very thrilled to be part of this. So I started this Zepbound journey in the beginning of January of this year. And a lot of my reason for starting to take it was, as a woman of a certain age, I was noticing that in the last 10 years, I've put on, 2, 3 pounds a year. Doesn't sound a lot over a year, but over 10 years, as you can imagine, that adds up. But more importantly than that, I was noticing that my cholesterol levels were going up and my blood pressure was increasing. And no matter what I did in terms of adjusting diet and exercise and healthy lifestyle and all of those things, it was not making a difference. And I was getting very frustrated and very concerned about these numbers, and then started wondering, well, if my blood pressure and my cholesterol is going up, at what point am I starting the, pre-diabetes screening and those kinds of things? So I made what I felt was an educated choice with my doctor to start on Zepbound, and it has been honestly life-changing. My cholesterol level is back where it should be. It's not been like that for years. My blood pressure is regulated. I've lost 25 pounds, which is, great vanity boost there. And I have been really delighted with how it's worked. And to John's point about the appetite, yes, I eat less, but it certainly does not detract from any of the fancy schmancy restaurants that we go to or the dinners that we enjoy and so on. So that has not been a thing.
That's been a huge relief because we obviously travel together, and so when I travel by myself, I basically book restaurant lunch, restaurant dinner, restaurant lunch, restaurant dinner, restaurant lunch, restaurant dinner. When it's the two of us, I have to dial that back a bit, but I still want to go to nice places. And just recently, for example, we were in Norwich, in the UK, and I couldn't go for the full restaurant every day, but you still end up doing choosing to go to nice places because the appreciation is still there. That was the important piece. That's what I wanted to know didn't disappear. I mean, I'm almost tempted to, should I talk to the doctor, because I'm obviously a bit of a lardy git as well. So I'm not sure on that one. But we did things like there's like really nice Asian place called Exo Kitchen in Norwich, and then very good place called Benedict's. That if it had been the full disinterest in food, we wouldn't have done. So it totally changed our experience on that trip.
But
anyway, that's
also
a sidebar, so I'm going to pass it back.
For John, a benefit of this is that if we are at one of these fancy places and I'm like, oh no, I can't finish all this steak tartare, he's like, oh no, I will. So really it's a win-win for him.
So, Kat, I don't know if you were done, but what drug are you on again? Sorry, I don't know if
it's the Zepbound, the Lilly one.
Excuse me.
Okay.
Sorry.
So, yeah, no, I was gonna correct him too, Kat.
There you go.
So you okay? So thanks for sharing your story, and you had we all, as we get older, have definitely put on a couple pounds per year. So most of us in our 50s or even 60s are now somewhat encouraged to hear more of your story. But you said there was something else. You had like cholesterol problems. Did I hear you right there? Or
yes,
no?
yes, absolutely.
Okay. And so does the doc look at you and say, hey, this might be a solution, or are you proactively? How did it?
So it was something that I'd been looking at, and this sort of like a sidebar, but there's a whole resurgence in women's health at the moment, looking at ways that you can manage that as you hit your 50s and so on.
Mm-hmm.
And there's a doctor I follow, Dr. Claire Havers, who was talking about the combined effects of HRT and weight loss drugs and how it really can sort of do a reset on your metabolism and affect things like your cholesterol and blood pressure. And I'd been following her studies extensively and talked to my doctor about it. And she's like, oh, okay, this sounds interesting. You're going in with your eyes open. And yeah, that I've been taking a low dose of a statin for a couple of years, has not made the slightest bit of difference. But this has. And it's quite fascinating that, yeah, all of these other things. The other thing I would say about this is that it calms, and other friends have said this, it calms kind of that food noise or food craving, and not just necessary for food. So instead of having that extra glass of wine, I might be like, I'll just have a glass of wine, or I might not have wine at all. It takes away that impulse, maybe.
Yeah,
I
the
don't know
craving. Yeah,
what, but
impulse is
yes.
a good word for it. Yeah.
I used to be a social smoker, and again, that's something that completely has disappeared as well. So very interesting, some of these other channels that it seems to be affecting.
Yeah, we're a science show, so it's hard to not leave out part of the change of life that's happening, right?
Right,
So I
right.
think we're going to skirt around it a little bit because it's always a little taboo to talk about it. But I'm also sitting here thinking about my own wife, like, oh my
Mhm,
goodness,
Sure.
something for her, right? And like,
mhm.
so when you start this journey, and I have some friends that have taken it and they've had to try all different types and things like
Right.
that. How did you get out of the gate immediately with the Lilly drug? Is that bound or?
Yeah.
And that's an
Yeah.
interesting one because that is the combo one, right? Is that the
Right.
Yes.
dual?
Yeah.
Right.
Okay.
So I had heard some stories of other friends who'd done
We go with the semaglutide.
Wegovy,
Yeah.
yeah,
Hmm.
and that can be quite rough on your system. And from what I've heard, that really did kind of dull any interest in food. So that was one reason I didn't want to do that.
Yeah, and I do think that's a personal. I mean, we do react differently to
Right.
things, and that dulling of interest. I mean, I know I talked to one of our colleagues, and as he's not here, I don't want to name him at all. But he talked about how he could go for hours not even think about food. So he had to really remind himself
Mm.
to eat. When I
Mhm.
heard that, that's what set off an alarm bell in my head. Because like I do not want to function with that. Because like I say, I hate we keep bringing it back to it, but I do. I really enjoy food, so I'd hate to lose that interest in
Yeah.
It
food.
is it's some of the best parts of the day, John, for
Yeah,
sure.
exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and so because I mean, it's that it is. So yeah, I mean, I'm lucky in that. So this is going way off in a tangent. But I
Shocker.
think it's
Shocker.
interesting in that So I have two sisters. My elder sister, though, obviously we were being parented in the '60s, and parenting was very different then from now. But it was that period where if you didn't finish your meal,
Oh
you had
yeah.
to sit at the
Yeah.
table
Yeah.
Oh
until you
yeah.
finished it.
You ate what was on your
And
You
plate.
can't use
Yeah.
that excuse, John. Your dad's not telling you to finish your meal because I go
Yeah,
the
well,
same
see, and
way.
I was a second kid, and I learned my lesson because I watched what went on with my elder sister, and so my policy was completely different. If I was confronted with a plate of food, there were things I didn't like on that plate, but I ate them first and then focused on the stuff I liked, and
Oh,
that's how
well,
I
John, we all did that. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
but that was a different approach as opposed to digging my heels and say I don't want to eat that. I just like, okay, I really don't like this, but I'm going to get it down my neck and then I'm going to eat the good stuff. And so what we found since, because when we got together a couple of years ago, my sisters were talking about food, and I'm fascinated with food. I love it as a topic and everything else. My sister has no interest in food, and a lot of it she places back on that being made to eat things she didn't
Mm.
like, and it's just totally lost that, never had that
There's no
joy.
joy
And I
there,
think
is there? No.
I think it is a real joy if you have that appreciation
Well, I
of
think I over enjoy too much
well,
myself.
we do.
We all
I
do,
do
yeah.
too. But anyway, I'm sorry to sidetrack, but
No,
I
no, no.
think
It's all good. I think I was going to jump back into the, kind of just I've had people. So maybe you didn't experience this.
Mhm.
Wide range of things. I've started thinking about this more now, and we do have the one colleague that John was talking about, but I have
Mhm.
another colleague who, man, he took. I can't remember exactly which one it was, and he's landed on one now, and he's lost some weight, but it made him nauseous. Not only like forget about eating food, he couldn't even think about it.
Yeah.
He would
sure.
Yeah.
smell things. I remember being out with him one time, and he used to like beer. He's like, "Oh, this is making me sick." He had to leave. So you didn't have to go through any of that. Is that accurate
No.
or?
So I think possibly the only time I've experienced that is so one of the challenges, especially living in a more rural area, is you renew your prescription every 4 weeks, and sometimes only a certain amount gets delivered to tiny old upstate New
Mm.
York. So that's taken a little bit of adjusting of like when you work with your insurance company to get the prescription renewed, so then it gets to the pharmacy in time so that when you are on the list when the shipment comes in, which sounds very sort of I don't know, like black
Yeah.
market. But
No, it
that's
sounds like you're in like you're like in a Western movie right now. Like,
exactly,
like the where's the Pony Express bringing it to
yeah,
you? But,
yeah,
yeah,
and there's a line around the door waiting to pick it up.
yeah.
But
It's
so
sorry,
you're,
I didn't even think of that. Think about how
yeah,
you have to manage that. You're saying not only
Yeah.
is it like I got to
Yeah.
take this thing, I got to figure out how to keep my supply chain open.
Yep. Yep.
exactly. And so
Wow.
sometimes, especially in those first months, there was a delay. So you're supposed to take it once a week, ideally at the same time. That piece doesn't matter as much. But there were a couple of months where it was a week before I got my new supply in, and I definitely going back to it was a bit of a rough reintroduction. So
But just it makes you a little nauseous, or what do you mean? Like it
yeah,
just your body's got to get
absolutely.
acclimated, right? You're given this
Yeah,
really, it's a potent,
it
you know,
Yeah.
is. It is.
peptide. It's a
Yeah.
hormone, really. I feel like
Yep.
these are hormones in some
Yeah.
respect, right?
And I will say that I took a decision very early on that I didn't want to keep on increasing. So, there's an option, you start off on the very lowest dose for
Mm.
the first month, see how your body tolerates it, and then you can gradually increase over the next month. I think for Zepbound it's 0.551, etc., like that.
Mhm.
But I stopped at the second dose and I've just stayed on that because for me it was more important just to have a steady, gradual decrease in everything rather than go for a sudden
Yeah,
loss
no, that
in.
makes sense. No, and you're I think anything in moderation can be good, right? That I think, and
Mhm.
then if you're one of those obsessed people who's like, I want more, I want more, I want to, then it can kind of maybe have less of a, it's gonna might have more side effect, right? But
Right.
you never had type 2 diabetes, right? That
No,
was
No.
no.
never correct. So then I have a sibling who he takes this stuff and he's like, he just stopped taking it. He's like, it's not doing a damn thing for me. It
Interesting.
didn't create his
Interesting.
appetite.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's such a and like, he didn't cycle through 6 different versions of it or anything like that. He would just like, I feel like he was on the original kind of 2005 one there from the
Okay.
exenatide. He was on that for
Yeah.
years, and then they tried to switch him over to the Monjavi, and he's like, or Zepbound, and he was like,
Mhm.
"Oh, this isn't doing anything for me." So,
Yeah.
just a
It's
side note there. I
interesting.
think there is a lot of like, just I think for look, if I were to go take this, I'd want it to be as low dose as possible.
Mhm.
Similar to what you're doing, Kat. Right? I think you
Mhm.
got the right approach here for those that might want to dip their toe.
Yeah. I, for me, I honestly, I can't say enough about what a positive experience it's
Yeah.
been. And, a longer term goal is to, not be taking blood pressure medicine, not be taking a cholesterol statin.
Wow.
If I could just take one thing, wouldn't that be much better, right?
Yeah.
And it's got the added benefit of losing weight. So,
How
Yeah.
close are you to that? Do you know, like, how does that work? Like, at what point is there a cholesterol measurement gets below a certain level, you can stop taking it, or blood
right,
pressure?
or maybe cut the dose in half, see how that
Mm.
goes, that kind of thing. So yeah, we do sort of like 3 monthly checkups, and so when I go back in November, that's going to be another conversation
Okay,
of
so you,
okay,
you
so
started taking it in January, is that right? You started
yes,
in January,
yeah,
and to date you've lost like 20 or 30 pounds, you said, or how
yeah,
much?
about 25 pounds.
Wow, that's really, really cool. And like so, and you kind of you said like, hey, look, there's an acclimation period there. That's
Hmm.
normal. And then like if you missed a dose, you had to go through that a little bit more. But outside of that, not anything. Not you're not like repulsed by food. You don't feel
No, no,
nauseous or anything because that's excellent. Like just no
yeah,
certain smells affect you or anything like that. Or
no. I think the only, and this is perhaps an anecdotal thing. The only thing I have perhaps noticed is so I have migraines.
mm,
I get Botox treatment for those, which has been phenomenal.
hmm
If you know anybody who has migraines and they haven't tried it, 100%,
Depends. I've got
it's
some. We know people get
yeah.
really, really severe migraines.
it really has been a game changer.
Well, yeah,
But
you're just blessed with everything, Kat. Aren't you
I
lucky?
am. I've got all the drugs,
Yeah.
all the cures. It's been
She's
amazing.
she's
Yeah,
blessed with knowing me.
there
Actually, I
you
think
go.
is
Oh,
the
yeah.
main thing.
That's the worst.
It's
Well,
it's
That's
the
the worst.
it's the
That's the
it's
worst
the
disease you've got. No, sorry.
it's the sheer joy of living with me
well,
that helps all this.
or you could say, is that the primary cause of all of
Oh
this?
yeah, I think it's the cost.
But
But so you had have the migraines gone away or what? What?
so they have been really manageable with Botox, but I will say that there have been more breakthrough migraines
Oh yeah.
since I've been on Zepbound
Okay.
than without it. And again, not to the level that they ever were before, but there's just been a little bit more. Okay,
Well, that's a
that's
tough one too, right? Because the
yeah.
change can have that, right? They say like
Also, so many things.
putatively after that all gets done, like they go away in women frequently. Have you heard that?
Yes, yes.
Okay.
If
Because
it's
my
a
wife's a
hormonal based
migraine person.
thing, yeah. Oh, really?
She gets some pretty bad. They've slowed
Yeah.
down a little bit. Now that I think about it, but like during her 40s, boy,
Oh,
they were
awful. Yeah,
devastating. And
yeah.
she got on one of those little injectables to help prevent it.
Oh, okay,
Yeah.
okay.
Yeah, that worked well for her. Although she would
Mhm.
love some Botox, but maybe for the neck and less for the
I was
headache.
going to say
No,
that also has a
no,
added benefits. Yeah, for sure.
no. So again, thanks for sharing your little story here. I don't. I just think for the sake of time, I don't
Yeah.
have like we kind of
Yeah.
really fascinating stuff. I could probably sit here and interview you for another hour or two just to learn more about it. But like, I guess like any parting words for our audience for those that might
Yeah.
be considering it, things
I
like
just
that.
want to say it's like we're not here. I'm not trying to push the benefits. I
Mm.
think these are really interesting drugs, but I think it was just really good to have. That I have heard other people say different things, like you have, Dominic. But just to say, this if you're in a certain position, then it might be something that can help. But I'm not pushing that. It's just it's the some of the negatives you hear aren't necessarily applicable to you because it varies by person. I mean, I was just thinking as we're talking about that variability between people and atorvastatin. I'm on a very high dose of the atorvastatin. Again, you read about some of the negative effects on that. I've never had a bad effect from the atorvastatin I've taken, but my sisters have had a much worse effect from some of the statins they've dealt with. So like I said, this is just. I thought it was good to talk about this is a case study because it sort of it does play into where these drugs going and where might you hear more about them, and what's someone who's taking it sees as a side benefit may actually be I don't know.
It
I
could be
don't know
the
what's
primary
happening. It could
benefit. Yeah,
become,
yeah.
yeah, another indication that your doctor is
No,
prescribing it
yeah.
for. So it
Yeah.
may take over from or maybe another reason from obesity. So if for example, I don't know what they're doing in terms of cholesterol, but there are definitely other approved indications which we'll touch on in a minute. But although the obesity is the high profile piece, it might just be that you're getting it prescribed it for other things because they're still finding out what these drugs can do, and I think that's why it was what was interesting really good to have this segment to talk about, from a personal aspect.
And I think the one thing I would say, and then I will disappear so you can all talk sciencey stuff, is that modern medicine should be able to help you, right, and help you lead your best life and be healthy and so on. And I know there is some stigma about taking so-called weight loss drugs. I think it's a misnaming of the drug. I think it should be about it's more of a lifestyle, like a
Even
healthy
that's iffy
lifestyle.
though to say
Well,
a
yes, no,
lifestyle drug.
I
If
don't know
you're
what
25 years old and you're 105 pounds and you want to be 100 and you're taking this, then that's a problem, right? Sorry to
Yeah,
jump
yes,
in there.
I think there's a whole
But I
other
think
lot of things that you
that's
should
the
be. Yes,
atypical, right? That's just
yes,
sensationalized
yeah,
news.
sure,
Most of
yes,
these people,
exactly.
yes.
I mean, I think the vast majority of people here are trying to, like you said, lifestyle, and I was gonna like that leads into like, do you feel more energetic? Do you like, are you
Absolutely.
yeah,
Yes.
like
Yes.
I can hear it in your voice. I knew the answer to that. When you're talking about this, you can tell this is like it's making life. Not that you were in pain or suffering.
No,
It's
but
making you youthful, right? You feel young
it's
again a little
and
bit,
it's
right?
those things like all of that demographic where as you're starting to get older and you are carrying more weight, you start thinking, oh well, at what point is it a hip replacement, a knee
Yeah,
replacement, and so on.
yeah.
And if being able to manage that now helps delay, or even, you don't need to worry about those surgeries when you're in your mid 60s, 70s, whatever, then that's great preventative medicine.
You know,
absolutely.
the 25 pounds off of weight loss has tremendous benefits for knees, joints, heart, all of it. You know, so, and
Absolutely.
you know, I'll share. I've lost about 35 pounds this year, but I did like carb cycling and some other things. Just really changed my diet. And by the way, the moment I go back to eating like the old version of me, I'll put 2-3 pounds on in like a day or two, right? So
Yeah,
like,
Yeah.
and not that you got to starve yourself on this diet, but it's, you know, it's like a low carb, mid carb, high carb, low carb, mid carb, high
Okay.
carb day, right? And so, but like you know, you can't eat any sweets or treats like that. That's not really part of it. It's a lot of like
Mhm.
just foods that are good, but you know, the moment you go back to eating like pizza and having a sandwich or something like that, boom, I
Yeah.
put two,
Yeah.
3 pounds. It's unbelievable. Getting old sucks is what I'm trying to say. Because like in my
I
20s, I didn't
know.
whatever.
we're well aware.
I was eating 12-inch sandwiches and flopping 2 slices of pizza together at lunchtime and not putting weight
Yeah, I
on.
know.
So,
It's so sad, isn't it?
but
It's
you
like
know,
now you just look at that food and yeah, it's all over.
Right,
it's
we need to move
unbelievable.
on.
You can eat shit.
We
You
need
know,
to move.
you can eat a lot of. You can eat plenty of vegetables. Yeah,
Yay!
really. But the moment you eat, like it's like I swear I felt like I had like a couple slices of pizza and put 2 pounds on because of it. I'm like, what
Yeah,
the heck?
yeah.
But
Yeah,
The struggle
yeah,
is real.
so,
Anyway,
so
thank you so much for inviting me on, gentlemen,
yeah,
and I will leave you to your conversation.
yep.
yeah, no,
Thanks a
appreciate
lot.
it. Thank you for
Yeah.
sharing.
We may bring you back for the hot seat.
Oh, okay.
Yeah,
No.
yeah, for a
All
couple of
right, if
minutes.
he wants to come back, yeah. I mean, John, we can wrap up real fast and then do some hot seat. I know
Yeah,
we had
we can, I think the next sections can go fairly quickly. I mean, we again, like I said, I think this was the core piece. It was important to hear what it does, and because as we mentioned or have been alluding to, there are other approved indications. I mean, semaglutide is already approved for 2 additional indications, and this again, it sort of in March 2024, semaglutide was expanded the indication to reduce the risk of cardiovascular death, heart attack, and stroke in adults with cardiovascular disease.
but those are all weight related, John, right? So
Exactly,
yeah.
and it plays into it plays into the cholesterol and cardiovascular thing, and then just a week ago, it was again expanded to include the treatment of metabolic associated steatohepatitis or MASH in adults with moderate to advanced fibrosis, extensive scar tissues in the liver. MASH is a really big area, and
Yeah.
the number of drugs that have looked hopeful for MASH or NASH have gone a lot of crashed and burned in that. There is one
No.
other approved medication out there, but to see that Wegovy is out there, they sort of tirzepatide is following a similar path, and again we'll touch on it later. But it also it's got a second approval for the treatment of moderate to severe obstructive sleep apnea, and I think that was I may have abbreviate that. I think that was either in diabetic or obese patients. But again, it's we haven't touched on that, and there's been very little focus on the sleep apnea piece. But there's a different pathway that's
Uh-huh.
been affected. So it's that there's so much going on in this area. That was that talk. I don't know if you want to say anything. There isn't much. I
No, no,
don't know.
I think you covered you those are the known, but I mean, it could be a wonder drug, John. Who knows?
Yeah,
Like the benefits that it might especially like in a low dosage, like your wife's taking, could be life
sure.
changing. They
Yeah,
seem to be
yeah.
life changing. Yeah,
And so then the next stage, obviously, obesity has got so much interest. It's we didn't touch on it, but the both Zepbound and Wegovy are mainly injectable, although Wegovy there is an oral form. Um, so right now, I didn't print it out, but there's a really nice graphic. Of all the GLP-1s to date, Zepbound, the Lilly drug, has been shown to be most effective in terms of percentage weight loss. Moving to the oral, Wegovy is like the next in line, so that's why
and
those are
John,
the
that's
two best sellers.
staggeringly superior, by the way. Right?
Yeah, yeah,
Zepbound,
it was
yeah, but that's the one that's got that jip in there too, right? Yeah,
just incredible when you look at the
yeah.
graphics. So, but because they're injected, it's got that
Stigma about it. Yeah.
it's yeah. It's I wanted to ask about it, but but that's fine. We
Some
we
people
can
don't
move
want
on.
to inject
It,
themselves. It really does
yeah,
make you feel like you're like a cancer patient versus just popping a
yeah,
pill. Like I don't
yeah,
know, but
yeah.
whatever. It makes you feel like you're got a
So,
true
so,
sickness if
So
you got to inject
the
yourself.
ease of medication with an oral pill is big for people. I have not noticed any issue with Kath taking using the injectable. She's fine with it, but obviously other people won't be. So there's a lot of drugs in the pipeline. So again, most of them are all GLP-1 agonists. But so I think, and it's you're hearing updates all the time. So Lilly have their main oral therapy is a thing called orforglipron, which was like I think it was a weight loss of around 11% after 72 weeks, which was viewed as disappointing. But then just a little bit later, it was talking about how it had actually helped people with both obesity and type 2 diabetes lose up to 99.6% of their weight after about 17 months. And that is actually could be pushing it towards submission and approval. So it's moving forward. You've got oral Wegovy, but then you've got other companies like Roche, Viking Therapeutics,
Mhm.
Structure Therapeutics have all got candidates that are in that sort of phase 2, phase 3 type of area. I think Viking had really good phase 1 results, but their phase 2 were more disappointing. So it's then how do they come back from that? And then there's another company called Rego Therapeutics in Shanghai who have got. There's just a lot of these out there. But right now the gold standards are the injectables. It's no oral has matched that, but who knows? I mean,
It
again,
looks like
it's
a
no.
couple of the Novo and the Lilly orals they're effective, but you're right, not
Mhm.
they're. It's interesting, John. Like Novo has 4 drugs now that are
You
kind
sure?
of
Yeah,
trials.
yeah.
Lilly's got 2, but it is. I didn't realize they're really, really putting all their eggs in one basket there. But
Well,
um,
I think they, in terms of they got a lot of it. I wouldn't say they've all their eggs in that one basket because they really, again, they start with diabetes, but I think they are trying to expand their.
yeah,
Obviously,
I was reading about it a
done
little bit. They had some shakeups too.
yeah,
Their
exactly, yeah,
CEO. They had
yeah,
some stuff going
yeah.
on. Well, no, fascinating, John. Really a fun topic to talk about. So we touched on the oral updates. How about the bioanalysis? We are a
I think
bioanalysis
that's where we
show,
need to
right?
be
So,
because because if the pharmaceutical companies are active in this area, then it means that we're active in this area. And so, I mean, obviously, if someone comes to us with an oral GLP-1, that's a no-brainer. That's going to be mass spec. But that's why I was listing the molecular weights of the approved versions today, in that the wide range. I mean, a lot of the ones that are the GLP-1 to 7 to 37 based were around that 4,000 molecular weight. They're mainly done by mass spec, but they could also be done by LBA. We have the 2 pathways with mass spec where we could measure them intact, or if someone felt they really wanted to go more sensitive, we could possibly look at a hybrid approach. We digest a smaller peptide to gain sensitivity that way. So there's a lot you can do on those. And then if you've got more, it's surprising, at least from my perspective. I obviously, as a mass spec person, I'm not seeing any larger molecular weight ones like you. We talked about the one that was the GSK drug and the approved the first approved Lilly drug that were attached to the IgG. Where they're in that 60, 70,000 molecular weight, that again plays into LBA
yes.
and could be a hybrid approach. So there's a lot of ways you can crack these in terms of support for PK. So we can offer a lot here.
Yeah, I just think if it's a oral version, like you said, a mass spec is a pretty straightforward method. But those, I mean, what's 5, 10 years from now? Who knows what the molecular weight and what? Good Lord,
Mhm.
it could be. This could be given as like a routine to anybody over the age of 50 to prevent strokes, for instance, or to prevent cardiac arrest. Right? This
Sure.
is
Yeah,
really.
exactly.
I feel like this is it. I'm warming up to the fact that this is a wonder drug because of the number of people that I know that it's affecting them in a positive way. And John, the only real side effect that I've heard about is some constipation. Outside of that, there hasn't been really any. There might be some things about some gingivitis, but those are all hard to judge. But I haven't seen any negative things, and it's been a few years now. This isn't new, right? These are things that
I,
are
th- I
going on
think,
for a long
yeah.
time. So I jumped off the bioanalysis
Yeah, and that's
bandwagon.
absolutely fine. I didn't spend too much time looking at. I think there are side effects beyond the more GI type things that are sort of low probability. There are I think there's been a couple where semaglutide's been implicated, but again, it's not like the majority of people have those side effects. I think it is mainly gastrointestinal things,
Yeah, but some
and
of the
that's it.
people being treated with this are fairly sick, so it's hard to say if it's the drug or not, right? But
Sure, exactly.
so,
Yeah,
so
yeah.
so back to
Or
the
it could,
bioanalysis, John. We
or
know I don't know of any real immunogenicity against it. Now,
okay.
in
Okay.
the larger forms, that for sure that's different because you've got that kind of backbone of IgG in there, and so you've got to take or FC. It was FC. You've got to take that into account. John, I don't think any of the I
But
can't recall any sort of anti-drug antibodies against these things, even though traditionally, I'm sure you need to look for it, but I don't know, John. Maybe that's some homework. I don't know of any neutralizing or anything like that, but
I don't know that there is, but we've certainly talked to customers, potential customers, about the doing some ADA work for what are more smaller or peptide based drugs in this area. So I think there's interest, even if it hasn't been seen. I
now I
think
got to go back and look, John. I wonder if
yeah,
we have
yeah,
any ADA assays for
yeah,
GLP. I mean, I know we have a number of GLP-1 studies, but I don't. I think
yeah.
we're all just doing
For
PK and biomarker work. I don't know of any
exactly. Yeah,
ADA. And it makes sense why too. I mean, it's even these ones that they try to extend the half life and stuff like that. The immune, it's just broken down so quickly. It's hard to imagine how you generate an antibody against something
well,
that's so
I mean,
easily
it,
degraded.
I don't know. I mean, they said half life of semaglutide is 7 days,
Yeah,
so
but
I bet
still, a half
again.
life
Yeah,
of 7 days of a peptide, though, John.
sure. Yeah.
Even
No,
even that, like
exactly.
the
Yeah, I
moment
know
it
that.
goes, the way it gets, if you think about triggering adaptive immune responses through MHC1 and two, it
Sure.
breaks down. It's like it has to get internalized by some sort of professional antigen presenting cell, a dendritic cell, a macrophage, a monocyte of some sort. And then that peptide has to be digested in a certain way. And it's already, the amino acid, the clef, the MHC cliffs are like somewhere between 9 and 13 in size. This is already kind of starting out with, if it just gets a couple degradations, it's going to be too small. And it just
Yeah.
doesn't seem
Yeah.
like
Yeah.
as it goes through cell trafficking, there's also, so it has to get taken up by like, some sort of uptake through the cell. It usually goes into some sort of um, lysosomal breakdown, and then there's an MC2 compartment. That's part of how you get to an antibody response. All that for a peptide. That's why there
Yeah.
are some cases early on of insulin ADAs, but they corrected that pretty quickly.
Yeah,
Anyhow,
so
just a thought. So
I know,
I'm going to go look into it a little more. But
I know there's been interest in it with like I say with calls that we've been on. So yeah, I don't know how much there is out there, but
yeah,
like I say, for us, this is a fertile field. I don't know if there's much more to say on the BioA, and we could wrap up with just where these drugs are going for the
let's just wrap
future.
it up, and then we'll get
Yeah,
the hot seat going.
yeah, exactly. So we talked about Wegovy or the semaglutide, sorry,
Yeah.
being approved for both for cardiovascular complications. Also, tirzepatide is being looked at in terms of it has shown clinically significant benefits among participants with obesity and heart failure with preserved ejection fractions. So again, it's looking more at the cardiovascular piece there. Also, a systematic review and meta-analysis published in 2024 found that tirzepatide demonstrates benefits in the management of metabolic dysfunction associated steatotic liver disease. So again, looking at the MASH indication. So I think you're likely to see further expansion of the label for that. I think it's interesting where like I've been sort of compiling or watching GLP-1
Yeah,
stuff
this one I was
since
aware of, but go on. Yeah. Yep.
since our last time we talked about this. But there's like in January, observational study from Washington University in St. Louis. Um,
Yeah.
Researchers found that the use of these medicines may reduce the risk of Alzheimer's and substance abuse disorders while increasing the risk of digestive issues and arthritis. So that was a plus and minus of these drugs, but certainly could tell you areas that it could move into.
Well,
Novo
slow down, John. I
Nordisk.
think that makes sense, right? So
Yeah,
look, if all
sure.
these things are suppressing your appetite and they have an effect on weight loss, of course, there could be a risk of some digestive issues because mechanism of action has to be somewhere.
Sure. Yeah.
And then
Yeah.
arthritis is a tough one because let's face it, you live long enough, you're going to have arthritis. I don't care who you are. You know what I mean? So,
Yes.
that's a small trade-off to live in preventing Alzheimer's or, helping with any sort of abuse disorders and things like that. You know what I mean? So like that's a I want to emphasize that a little bit, John. That there's weight loss benefits, there's diabetic benefits, there's cardiac benefits. I believe there's stroke benefits. I do think this could have Alzheimer's. Just like
Sure. Yeah.
maybe not in its current format, but what's the next iteration, right?
Exactly. Yeah. Yeah.
Because think about, you want to talk about drugs that have failed. The amount of failed Alzheimer's drugs is just unbelievable. It's
Oh,
probably
sure.
one of the
Absolutely. Yeah.
it's
Yeah.
probably one of the
Yeah.
biggest black eyes in the scientific industry. It's been elusive for 25 years. I know there's been an approved biologic, but it does not work, right?
Sure.
It's been really, because it's such a patient oriented ideology. If you and I were to have it, the way you got it and the way I got it going to be completely different, right? That's the problem. There's no kind of like, um, it's not like, you know, like, um, most cancers, there is a certain degree of, it's coming from this or
Yeah.
but there's no rhyme or reason. There is some genetic propensity for Alzheimer's, I'll say that, but
Hmm.
how it strikes and things like that. So, but maybe we're running long, John. Sorry, I went on a big diatribe there, but I
No,
do
no, it's
think
absolutely fine.
these drugs have incredible. This is something that, um, almost like over time we have fluoride in the water, right? Maybe
Yeah.
we need GLP-1s in the water, John, right?
Yes.
That's where I'm going, right?
Just let me very quickly
Yeah.
touch on just other things that the highlights of other research. Novo Nordisk are wondering whether these drugs can reduce alcohol or drug abuse, which again plays into the
Uh-huh.
I don't need that extra glass of wine.
Uh-huh.
I don't. I mean, that's a milder form, but again, could they have a role there? In terms of different, talked about GLP-2 very early on. Zealand Pharma in Denmark, they have a GLP-1/GLP-2 drug, and part of the drive for that was to try and reduce some of the gastrointestinal side effects. But again, the company says by dual targeting both hormones, it can improve inflammation levels with increased intestinal barrier function, effectively tamping down on leaky gut thanks to GLP-2 agonism. So that's that slightly different approach. And then there's another Innovant or another company have a obesity medicine mazdutide approved in China, becoming the first dual GLP-1 glucagon agonist to be greenlit for the disease anywhere in the world. So it's sort of reasonable weight loss figures, but it's just it's complementary to Wegovy and Zepbound, slightly again different combination, but we'll see where it all goes. I mean, then the final thing I want to touch on is with every patented medication comes a finite lifespan, and uh, Viatris has cleared another obstacle in its quest to launch generic versions of Novo Nordisk's lucrative semaglutide drugs for diabetes and obesity. In July, a district court in Delaware took the side of Mylan, now part of Viatris, in a case over a proposed generic to the GLP-1 obesity blockbuster Wegovy. And I think I listed earlier that the Wegovy's patent expires in 2031, so the window is, or the clock is ticking for Wegovy.
Oh yeah, that's big dollars there, John, for sure. So
Yes, exactly.
yeah,
Yes.
no, and I did see your little note about the patent being up, and it makes a lot of sense. And this Viatris company is right on top of things, John. Good for them. I'm sure. Stay tuned. You're going to see a lot more generics in this space,
Yeah,
I would imagine, over time.
exactly,
The next
because
Teva will be kind of coming out of this, right? I'm sure maybe even thereafter.
because some of the concern on this, which I didn't touch on, has been the cost of the drugs and how can, obviously, how can everyone access them, or how can all patient groups access them? But
Yeah,
because the
and
cost
then there
can
was
be prohibitive.
a little bit of a supply chain issue too there. And then even like, Novo bought some of the manufacturers, so that
The
created
Catalan,
and now they might be undoing some of that. So I'm going to
yeah.
stay away from all that. But
Stay away
that's
from that from
a
now
problem. Yeah.
until we know how it all resolves.
Yep.
Right. Let me step out for a minute, and then we
Yeah.
can do the hot seat. Unless there's any final thoughts before we move on.
No. Just a wonderful discussion today, and looking forward to seeing what the future holds for GLP-1s and other, maybe even GLP-2s, and look out. Great that it's helping with obesity and making. I think it's really helping with lifestyle.
Sure.
But I do think there's a whole plethora of potential added benefits here that, with some minor engineering or tweaks and things like that, it could be prevent cardiac, prevent stroke, prevent all sorts of
Yeah.
abuses and things like that. And John, I think that I've mentioned this before. The things like the erectile dysfunction drugs have been shown to be very highly preventative of men having strokes and heart attacks. You and I, every man over the age of 50 should be taking a quarter to a half pill daily. The studies,
Oh, really? Okay.
yeah, they did
Okay.
one out of Stanford. They did like 7,500 person trial and showed that like low dose erectile dysfunction drugs are because they started as cardiac drugs, right? So it
Sure.
kind of
Oh,
makes
absolutely.
sense.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah. Yeah.
it just lowers the inflammation of the heart,
Yep.
and that's
Yep.
good.
Just avoid the pomegranate juice when you have it.
Yeah. Well, I don't
Just,
really.
just like in that case, I think this has been great. Let's wind down. We'll do the hot seat.
Well, thank you. Thank you.
Yeah. So we have you're in the hot seat now. Look out!
Every guest has the hot seat questions, which are not exactly taxing.
Technically,
We will avoid the favorite podcast episode, because I know there's no way that Kath would listen to podcasts, because she hears quite enough of me rambling on every day.
It's this one now. That's her favorite one, number 92. Yeah. But I'll kick us off. You got a favorite dish you like to make? Although we're living with John, I don't know if you want to answer this one, but you got a favorite dish you like?
Actually, yes. My go-to dish is a Gordon Ramsay-inspired risotto recipe, which has stood the test of time and comes out absolutely delicious every single time. So it would be that.
I'll vouch for that. It's great.
Yeah.
Although I will also note that I was the first person in the house to do it, and then I got the recipe stolen from me.
Well,
yes. So that's my dish.
Mimicry is a great form of flattery, John. Don't think of it as being stolen.
Yes.
Me and Gordon go way back.
Yes.
I do like the Gordon Ramsay a lot. Enjoy him. And is there something special about the risotto? I got to pry a little bit.
Actually, yes, there is. So some risotto recipes use cream in the final stage to thicken it up or make it extra rich. This uses mascarpone cheese.
Ooh.
And it just really elevates that sort of rich, creamy, decadent.
It's a mix of mascarpone and parmesan.
Parmesan at the end as well.
It's fantastic. It's really good.
That makes more sense. Yeah, cream is fine, but cheese is always a little better.
Cheese is a winner.
Cheese is it's a lovely thing, and it's a good food for me in my diet. Cheese is an acceptable food.
Yes.
So, and I don't like the word diet either. It's a lifestyle change, and I want to live 100.
Yes.
So the next on the list is what's your favorite adult beverage?
Ooh, so I have, shockingly, I have a couple. Either a nice gin and tonic, you can't go wrong with that.
Oh yeah.
Or a nice glass of very chilled champagne. because
Ah,
I'm a
You
bougie bitch.
you're traitoring Chardonnay. Oh
Well,
my God!
that's
that's
just a
that's like drinking
thing.
Miller Lite for me. That's not my
Yeah,
favorite
you
drink.
know,
It's just what I drink the most of. That doesn't make it my favorite.
yeah, exactly. But those,
Yeah.
if I had to choose, those would be my favorites.
Have you ever had like Val's, Uncle Val's gin? You know that one at all?
No,
No, I
is that a
haven't.
Kansas one?
No, it's everywhere. If you go and look
Okay.
for it, maybe I'll send you a picture. You should be able to find it.
Yeah,
They
please,
have
please
like
do.
it's got a green like it got like 4 or 5 different. The gins are dense with. It's not if you just think it's like Tanqueray, you're never
Uh,
Oh no,
exploring the world of gin, right? Like
oh,
there are
there's no.
botanical gins, right? That you
It's
have a favorite
boomed in
type
the
or
last few years. And actually, when I was back in England last summer, my sister and I went and made our own gin.
oh wow,
So there's a distillery it's an offshoot of a brewery in a Norfolk town, and they take the whatever is left over from the brewing process and make vodka, and then they make gin, and then what we got to do was add the botanicals to it. So
yeah.
I did a very floral rose. It was quite lovely actually.
Yeah.
So
Well, I'll pass that along to John here in a minute. Here, it's Uncle. I think
thank
it's
you.
Uncle Vic's or Val's. I can find it real fast. And I went through quite the gin kick a couple years ago, and even had like uh, um, uh, uh, gins from around the world sent to me. And my
Oh
brain's
nice.
like a sieve. I don't even remember them, but I was trying some pretty exotic gins, and not there are some that kind of they're a little too much. I don't want to feel like I'm
Yeah.
I'm drinking a vase of flowers. You know what I
No,
mean?
exactly. You
So
don't want to drinking perfume.
yeah, no,
But
exactly. And I actually like I just enjoy the gin taste. Right, there's
yeah,
an acquired taste there, and so
definitely.
anyhow, and then champagne. That's surprisingly, I do enjoy the champagne. And you don't make mimosas or anything. You're just talking about a good old ice
Yeah,
cold
Yes,
chilled
yeah.
absolutely.
champagne.
So again, when we were back in Norwich this summer, we went to a winery close to where my sister lives, and 5, 10 years ago, talking about a winery in England would be like, oh my goodness, what she's lost it. But this winery has really developed some great wines, particularly with blending grapes for champagne, and it was really impressive.
Yeah,
It's been
Yeah,
winning some major awards in Europe.
it's
So
that's one thing where the UK has benefited from
from
cleimate
the shift
change.
in climate has
Yeah,
really
oh,
allowed
huh,
grape
interesting.
growing and
yeah.
so on. So yeah, so
No, obviously the first of the year is a champagne moment. My wife and I are pretty good about celebrating things, so we'll have the
I
occasional
was going to say,
mimosa.
honestly, any excuse for
Yeah, no,
celebrating.
I do like
Life
it.
should be like that, right?
Yeah, and what I really like about champagne, it makes me feel real fancy when I drink it out of the bottle. I don't know why. I
Ex-
just feel I just feel like a champion when I'm chugging it
yeah,
out of the bottle. Drives my
It,
wife
it,
exactly,
yeah,
nuts
exactly.
because I look
it's great
stupid.
out of a pint mug, isn't it?
Yeah, I just feel it just makes me feel like I won the Super Bowl or something
There
when
you
I'm
go.
drinking
There you
champagne.
go. You have to
But
have those moments. Yeah.
speaking of one last question, and then we can wrap it up. And it's been really enjoyable to have you on. I do feel sorry that you have to live with John, though.
Well,
What are your weekend plans? And maybe you got to do them
well,
with John. I love you, John.
very
More
I'm
weekend.
just kidding, John. You know I love you.
so, so very excitingly, we are reorganizing books this weekend.
Oh,
I don't know. I don't know if you know that John loves to collect all kinds of things. Right now, we are on a book buying frenzy, and we have run out of bookcases. So a plan basically involves reorganizing some furniture, bringing in some more bookcases, and then reorganizing all the books that we have so they're off the
It's
floor and
great
man,
fun,
your
everything.
but
weekend.
it's
That
also
weekend.
as part of it, we're actually clearing out the books that we've hung on to that we don't want. So we're actually
Yeah.
freeing up more space. So actually, it's a lot of fun.
It's
Yeah,
Yeah, I
it
mean,
I,
is.
it
I
just
do love
sounds
a
too
good.
much like work, but it sounds incredibly
yeah.
productive. And then I would spend like my wife would be looking over me. She's like, "Stop reading the books and stop
Well,
working."
there is
Yeah,
That's what's
there
going
is
to
that.
happen.
Yes,
yes,
yes.
yes,
Yeah,
Well,
like
I mean, but if you popped open a nice bottle of champagne while you're
exactly. There
reorganising
you
yeah.
the
go.
book,
It's
now it
yeah,
becomes a party.
yeah.
Well,
So
you guys are
there's
more
ways to do it.
productive than me. I have a pretty, it's Labor Day weekend, right? So you guys
Yeah.
Yep,
are going
sure.
to take the long weekend and all that. It kicks off tomorrow night when KU football. Our
Uh-huh.
season ticket holders of the KU football team because my son's a sophomore there. And we went to this brand new stadium. It was the inaugural
Nice.
game. Yeah, it was wonderful. That was last weekend. They won 31-7 over Fresno State. It was a nice win. They look
Excellent.
like a good team. So, and they're playing like Wagner. I don't even know who they are. So they're going to crush this team on Friday.
Good. As they
But
should.
that
Yeah.
kicks off the weekend, and then I got to go. One of my nephews is getting married in Branson, Missouri. He lives here in Kansas City, and so it'll be a little bit of a family reunion. I will see all three of my siblings and my mother and a bunch of
Excellent.
other people I don't know, but that's a couple days there, and so it's a pretty jam-packed weekend for me. But
sounds
Labor Day is a
really
weird
exciting.
time to get married. I wish you had chosen a different weekend, just because this is usually a fun weekend to go to a beach or a lake
Well,
house or something like that.
so our daughter got married Labor Day weekend 2 years ago, and actually it worked really well for us because we had so many people coming from out of
Yeah, I
town.
hadn't thought of that. I'm just selfish, Kat. You're learning a little bit about me. I mean, I only got so many weekends left, maybe about 3,000, 3,500 of them.
That is very
And I want to maximize all of them. I don't want to work them, and I certainly don't want to. I joke, but you're right. Everybody's going because of that. You're right. The whole family will be there because there's no excuses.
Speaking of weddings, though, how are you feeling about the engagement announcement?
Funny story. I mean, we got to wrap up. This is really funny. So my wife sends me a text yesterday, and it says, Travis and Taylor are getting married. And I'm like, look, I don't think about famous people at all. And so I'm like, we used to have a Travis Bond who worked for us, and there's like Don Dufield's daughter's Taylor Duffield. I'm like, who's getting married? So I sent her like a question mark. And she just laughs and sends me John, you and I are in the abnormal things. Like 80% of the country cares about this. We're the minority that's like, because, and as much as I don't care about it, I've heard that they showed like he did it in his backyard and it's a big event, right? There's all these things, right, Kat? It's a huge deal. And you know what? If it brings some joy to people, I'm going to support it. How about that?
There you go. Exactly.
I'm not going to hate on it, even though I really don't care at all. But if it brings joy, then it's good, right? We need more joy in the world.
Exactly. Yes.
And on that note, I agree with you. I think we should definitely wrap up because we've run long again.
It's one of our better long ones, John. So I'll see you in the funny pages, as they say.
Absolutely, yeah. I've got no more closing thoughts. This has been a blast. I've enjoyed it again. And we'll talk soon.